neighborhood event, Scholarship and Awards Breakfast, tomorrow morning, I believe 10 a.m. Tuesday, we have a Lunch and Learn program, Healthcare Changes and Their Effects. Presenters from the North Shore Medical Center. We need RSVPs. So check your WAVE, the Shabbat Bulletin, not the Shabbat, the monthly bulletin, which you can get out on the table outside. A lot of things happening this month. And June 1st, we have Shabbat Olam, Friday night, unbelievable artistic, musical, prayer experience, Shabbat from around the world. We're celebrating the music and the food of Barbados. So come join us, RSVP for that. And thank you to Jennifer and Michael for co-sponsoring today's Shabbat Cafe, along with the Kushinskis, who are having a bat mitzvah tonight. So mazel tov to them as well. And also a special thank you, because, and I'll talk more about this in my talk, but Michael really inspired it because he put a lot of extra love and detail into today's Shabbat Cafe in honor of his daughter. And so with that, I'm going to share with you, it has nothing to do with what I just spoke about, stupid people and the stupid things they do, okay? These are actually supposedly true violations of the law. Not that long ago in Georgia, investigating a purse snatching, detectives picked up a man who fit the thief's description, drove him back to the scene. He was told to exit the car and face the victim for an ID. The suspect carefully eyed the victim and blurted out, "Yep, that's the woman I robbed." Right? In Texas, a man convicted of robbery worked out a deal to pay $9,600 in damages rather than serve a prison sentence. For payment, he provided the court a forged check, and he got 10 years sentence. True stories. In Louisiana, a man walked into a Circle K, put a $20 bill on the counter, asked for change. When she opened up the cash register, he grabbed the money and ran, only to find out later how much was in the cash register, $15. In Seattle, recently was reported that a man attempted to siphon gasoline from a motorhome parked on a Seattle street. He got much more than he bargained for. He accidentally stuck the hose into the sewage unit. When the police showed up, he was throwing up on the side of the road. When asked if the owners of the vehicle wanted to press charges, they say, "No, this was the best laugh we have ever had." Arkansas, seems this guy wanted liquor pretty badly. He decided that he'd just throw a cinder block through a liquor store window, grab some booze and run. So he lifted the cinder block, heaved it over his head at the window. The cinder block bounced back, hit the plexiglass, knocked him out. Whole thing caught on camera. The police took him away when they showed up on the scene. In California, a man in Orange County Municipal Court recently had been ticketed for driving alone in the carpool lane. He claimed that the 4 frozen cadavers in the mortuary van he was driving should be counted. The judge ruled that passengers must be alive to qualify to be in the passenger lane, and he got a ticket, rightly so. And finally, in Michigan recently, a pair of robbers entered a record shop, nervously waving around their revolvers. The first one shouted, "Nobody move!" And when his partner moved, he shot him. I don't make the news, I just report it. It's really unbelievable when you think about stupid things people do. You can't make this stuff up, right? Sometimes life is just stranger than fiction or more stupid than fiction. It's hard to believe. And I doubt any of us will ever hold up a Circle K. I certainly hope not. Like another one I read about, guy went in for some beer, some alcohol, got carded, gave the ID, and decided then he would hold them up and left his ID behind, right? None of us are that dumb. But we all make stupid mistakes. Hopefully none of us will make those monumental stupid mistakes, but each and every one of us will do stupid things. Why? Because stupid isn't an issue of IQ, and doing stupid things is an issue of religious piety, right? Religious people and secular people do stupid things. Stupid is impartial. Stupidity is ecumenical. It's egalitarian. It's colorblind. It's age blind. It doesn't matter. Why? Because we are human beings, and human beings are fallible, and we're imperfect, and we make mistakes. So I want to talk today about some stupid mistakes that we make. I could talk about the stupid things people say. And if you ever want to hear the stupid things people say, go to a Shiva home, right, where you hear some of the most inane, unbelievable things being said to the mourners, right? That's not what we're going to talk about today. We could talk about the stupid things people do, right? One of my favorite movies, Forrest Gump. Stupid is as stupid does, right? You do stupid things. I do stupid things. We all do stupid things. But I want to talk today about the stupid things we don't do, right? The stupid things that we don't do. Because I've given many talks on doing, on too much doing. As a teacher of mine, Wayne Dyer, says, too often we're human doings and we're not human beings. We're over-programmed, we're over-scheduled, right? We need time to stop doing, to start being. We need Shabbat. That's not today's conversation. Because oftentimes in life, there are more things we could be doing. There are more things we should be doing. We sometimes or oftentimes need to give more. Or sometimes it's not the amount, but the quality of what we do or what we give that needs to be modified or tweaked or increased or changed. A friend of mine in rabbinical school, no longer a practicing rabbi, lived by the mantra, if the minimum weren't good enough, they wouldn't call it the minimum. Right? If the minimum weren't good enough, they wouldn't call it the minimum. I've heard it said in medical school, what do you call a doctor that gets all C's? Doctor, right? I'm not sure I want that person as my doctor, if that's their mantra, or that rabbi as my rabbi. I'm not sure I want to be guided by somebody who says that the minimum is good enough. That's why it's called the minimum. It may be true, right? The minimum may be true in certain areas of life. I shared with you my mishigas about taking care of my yard. In that area, I think the minimum is good enough. That's why they call it the minimum, right? I'll pick so many weeds and call it a day. That was a talk a few weeks ago. But by and large, we need more than the minimum in our lives if we're going to live a good life, if we're going to live a meaningful life and an inspired life and a life without blemishes. Because that's what this week's Torah portion was really talking about. In this week's Torah portion, we deal with korbanot. We deal with sacrifices. And we have a real problem in our life in the 21st century if we are biblical literalists, because we certainly don't want to be literal in this week's Torah portion. If we did, instead of the Amidah, the prayer that we just did, we would have a barbecue pit up here, and we would be offering burnt sacrifices to God, right? But we're not biblical literalists. We don't have the sacrificial system that we had, 2,000 years ago. Nonetheless, there's still wisdom to be drawn from our tradition, from these rituals, even if we don't exactly engage them. So what is a korban? A korban, we translate as sacrifice, literally means likarev, means to draw close to God. This was our ancient brothers and sisters' way of drawing close to God. They would bring a goat or a cow, and they would offer it up as different types of offerings, in this case, a burnt offering. And it says something very interesting. What type of offering, what type of korban of sacrifice is accepted by God? Only one that is tamim, only one that is unblemished, only one that is pure. It says, Kol asher bo mum, lo takrivu, ki lo ratzon yeh lechem, that anybody who brings a korban, an offering that is a mum, that's imperfect, it's not accepted. It's not acceptable. Don't waste your time. It's not going to count as a check mark on high. We actually see this earlier on in our Torah. The first individual to spontaneously want to bring an offering to God was Cain. Cain and his brother Abel. Cain starts off as a pretty inspiring guy. He says, look, I want to show thanks to God, so he brings an offering without being asked. It seems like a great starting point. The problem is God rejects his offering. His brother Abel brings an offering to God, and it's accepted. Why? The rabbis look at the words, and it says because Abel brought the best of what he had to offer. Didn't say anything about Cain's, but from that, we can assume that Cain abided by the saying, if the minimum weren't good enough, they wouldn't call it the minimum. And God didn't accept the minimum from Cain, and his offer was rejected. The question is why? Why in this week's Torah portion does God care? I mean, some korbanot, some sacrifices served a deeper function. They kept the temple system running. So you would bring a sacrifice, and it was killed, and it was used to serve the Leviim, the Levites, and the Kohanim, the priests, but not the burnt offering. The burnt offering is charbroiled beyond recognition, beyond edibility. You can't do anything with it. So why would God care? If there's no value to the end product, why would God care if this was a blemished or an unblemished sacrifice? And the reason is because this isn't about God. God doesn't need sacrifices. God doesn't care about barbecues on high. That's not God. This is about us. This is about what we need. I mean, think about the high holy days. Do we really believe that God needs my prayers? Is that the kind of God that I can turn to? This needy, codependent Santa Claus in the sky? That's not a Jewish idea of God. Why do we show up on the high holy days or Shabbat? To check in with God, but most of all to check in with ourselves. The Hebrew word for tefillah is lehitpalel. It's the reflexive verb form. Praying is something we do to ourselves. We look at ourselves. We examine ourselves. We ask ourselves, have I given the best of what I have to offer? So we show up on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur or Shabbat, hopefully not for a checklist of who's been naughty and who's been nice, and I did this and I didn't do that, and I'll take 2 of these and one of those, right? That's not prayer. That's not the high holy days. It's not about dressing up and pomp and circumstance for God's sake. We do that for our sake because we need moments in time. We need rituals in our lives to show the best of what we are, to show the best of what we can be, to check in, to return to that place of the best, of being unblemished, of living unblemished lives. God does not desire burnt offerings or sacrifices, says Samuel, right? As much as listening to the voice of God, as much as doing God's work, or to put it succinctly in the Talmud, one of my favorite sayings, what does God want? Rahmana liba baye, which is Aramaic for God wants the heart. God doesn't want our burnt offerings. God doesn't even want our prayers. God wants us to train ourselves through praying, to train ourselves through the rituals, to bring the best of what we have to offer to bear in every moment. In that test run on Yom Kippur, or for Christians on Christmas or Easter, or for Muslims during Ramadan, right? Those are training moments, training ground to go out into the world, to go out into our lives, to bring the best to bear. Because God does not accept the minimum. You can fool people around you with the minimum. You can fool your spouse with the minimum, your friends, your community. You can even fool yourself, right? We can talk ourselves into anything, but you can't fool the source of it all. You can't fool God. So what does God want from us? Rahmana liba baye. God wants the heart. Or to put it in more modern language, a teacher of mine, an author whom I never met, but he was still a teacher, Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill said, what does God want? What do other people want? What should we want from ourselves? Not the minimum, but the maximum. Napoleon Hill called it the principle of going the extra mile. If you haven't read Think and Grow Rich, and for all of the students here, it is a must read, right? Think and Grow Rich is by Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill was hired by the steel magnate Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie wanted to impart a philosophy of success to another generation, to succeeding generations. So he hired Napoleon Hill to study 500 of the greatest men. It happened to only be men at the time. Could have done women too, but he studied 500 of the greatest men. Men like Thomas Edison and Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan, right? Unbelievably successful human beings. And Napoleon Hill studied them for one thing, to learn what they all had in common in achieving success. And one of the things he found was this principle of going the extra mile. And in his book, Think and Grow Rich, he illustrates it by talking about a famous man, who maybe you don't know his name, but you certainly know his product. His name was William Durant. William Durant was the founder of General Motors, right? General Motors cars. William Durant went to the bank one day, and the bank had just closed, right? Banker's hours, right? He gets there, and he has an important, withdrawal or deposit, and nobody really cares who he is. The bank is closed, except for one young man. This young man, whose name was Carroll Downs. Carroll Downs said, you know what, it's 5 o'clock, it's closing time, but here's somebody in need, and I'm going to go the extra mile. So he opened the doors, a different era, a different time, and he let him in, and he took care of him. And Mr. Durant was so impressed by this young man that he hired him on the spot for a marginally better job. It wasn't a huge pay increase, but he came to work for General Motors at an entry base level position. First day on the job, Carroll Downs gets there, and he's shocked because everybody goes home at, 5 o'clock when the when the whistle blows, right? Everybody just goes home. There's a mass exodus for the door, but not Carol Downs. It's not how he operated at the bank. It's not how he's going to operate at General Motors. He made it a habit to stay at GM until Mr. Durant left late at night. One day, Mr. Durant came out and was so taken by this and said, "Why do you do that?" He said, "Because you're here. And if you're here, you probably need somebody to help you." It wasn't big things that necessarily Mr. Durant was giving him. One of the examples is he said to Carol Downs, "I need a pencil." So a few minutes later, Carol Downs came in, not with one sharpened pencil, but with two sharpened pencils and an eraser and a little sharpener to boot, right? This was indicative of how Carol Downs lived his life. And finally, Mr. Durant gave him another opportunity and yet another and yet another. And pretty soon, Carol Downs was one of the greats at General Motors. He started as an average Joe, and he worked his way up because of this philosophy of going the extra mile. And ultimately, he succeeded, not just financially, though he did, but he succeeded in life, as do all of the greats who live their lives with this principle of going the extra mile. And this is not a simplistic idea. This is simple, right? But it's not simplistic. Simplistic means it's meaningless, it's silly. This is simple, but the truth is most of life's significant moments come down to simple moments. We have bat mitzvahs, and we have peak experiences, as Maslow would say, and valley experiences, sad experiences. But those are few, those are far in between. Where do most of life's simchas, joys, and sorrowful moments come? Daily. In human interactions, in relationships, that's where by and large most of our sorrow and most of our joy will take place. And it doesn't happen in those big birthday moments, in anniversary moments, in the big gifts that we give, those perfect gifts, right, that we buy for a loved one. Maybe that has its place, maybe it doesn't. Most of life comes down to the details, to the nuances. What makes a Hall of Fame batter? What gets them into the Hall of Fame? They don't have to hit 1,000 or 600 or 400, around 300. It's the difference of degrees from the person who hits 200. You hit the ball an extra time out of every 10 at plate. It's the little things, it's the marginal difference that defines the quality of our lives. How many marriages would be better, would grow stronger if we paid attention to those small things, the seemingly trivial, ordinary, mundane moments, and took them to another level? How many relationships with parents to children or children to parents would be healed if we paid attention, or we start paying attention to those little moments and taking them just a step further and getting beyond just the act of whatever we're doing, but put into it this principle of the extra mile? And relationships of all types only grow stronger, and we as a race, the human race, only grow better if we all put into it just a little bit more. And that's what the principle of the extra mile is taking the ordinary that we're going to do anyways, but making it unblemished, right? By Rahman Liba Baye, by putting it in our whole heart, the complete essence of who we are. There are so many examples of going the extra mile. I sifted through the internet to find some, but here are a laundry list, and you'll add to it your own. When everyone else is writing happy birthday on a friend's Facebook, what's going the extra mile? Just sending instead a private message. Not remarkably different, but different, going the extra mile. When someone asks you directions here at our Cineplex, instead of pointing down the hall saying take a right to get to Rabbi Kosofsky's Holy Nosh and Drosh, right? Walk them down there. Introduce them to Rabbi Kosofsky. That's what he would do. It's going the extra mile. Right? When someone comments on a book that you're reading, a friend comments on a book that you're reading, right? It's been done to me a few times where I'll say, that's an interesting book, and I'll go home and I'll see that they gifted me the book, right? They sent it to me through Amazon. What a generous offer for $9.99, and they really made me feel so valued and whole. When you're giving somebody a gift, instead of dropping it into one of those pre-made bags, which I'm guilty of doing, right, wrap it. Put a little thought into it. When giving a card, maybe you make the card. Maybe you put a handwritten note in it. I read about a dad who made lunch for his kids every day. Not only did he make lunch, but at the eulogy I was reading about, They remembered, what did he do? He put on the napkin just a little note every day of a happy face with "I love you," going the extra mile. When you give somebody a picture, right, or you take their picture, give them a picture, send them a copy, or write a little note on the back of it when it took place. When standing in line at Starbucks, I'd say, other unto-be-named cafes around here, but I'm going to stick with Starbucks. Right, when you're standing in line at Starbucks and you see somebody you know, buy them a coffee. I cannot tell you how good that makes somebody feel if you know them, if you don't know them, right? It's not much money, but the goodwill goes a long ways. When you overhear somebody saying their birthday, put it into your iPhone as a recurring occurrence every year and send them just a little email before their birthday. I'm telling you, the extra mile goes a long way. When you go home and you see your neighbor's garbage cans out, right? Take their garbage cans in for them, or maybe take their cans out for them. The principle of going the extra mile. When everyone's funneling through a busy door, just take a moment, hold it open for the person coming after you, and maybe have the holy chutzpah just to give them a smile, right? When you're at a store and you see something on sale, a food item, 2 for 1, buy 2 and give one to your neighbor, or deliver one to Aviv, or the JRC, or somebody you know who maybe isn't so mobile and can't go out and get such things. When you offer somebody a piece of gum, right, in a meeting, tell them to take one and just keep passing it down. It's like 99 cents, but one little stick of gum can transform the way somebody feels. It's going the extra mile. When you take your kids to the park, right, don't just take them to the park and stand there with your iPhone, but push them on the swing, or if you can still do it, right, and it's getting harder, get up on the jungle gym and play with them. But at the very least, stay off the iPhone, the BlackBerry. And when you are thinking how much you love your spouse or your child or a friend, right, don't just think it, say it. And don't just say it, show it. And don't just show it, take it one more step further and go the extra mile. You want to live an unblemished life? You want to talk about perfection? Then all you have to do is take it one step further, right? Bat 300 instead of 200. You just have to go the extra mile. I have exactly 60 seconds left, and in that time, I'm going to share with you a poem that hung on Mother Teresa's wall, because it sums it up best. People are often unreasonable, illogical, self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish or ulterior motives. Be kind anyways. If you're successful, you'll win some false friends. You'll win some true enemies. Succeed anyways. People may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyways. What you spend years building, somebody could destroy overnight. Build anyways. If you find serenity and happiness, others may be jealous. Be happy anyways. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyways. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you have. Go the extra mile anyways. You see, in final analysis, it wasn't between you and them. It was between you and God anyways. And with that, we're going to invite in our little unblemished offerings as they come forward and join us in the Ruach rally as we draw close to God, as we open our minds, as we open our hearts, as we open our souls, as we go the extra mile. And today, if you're going to sing, just sing a little bit louder, a little more Ruach. 187, Adon Olam. B'terem kol Yitzir nirah
Ve'ed nasa B'chatzokon Azai melech Shemo nikra